Hi everyone, today we are going to cover Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats. The central idea of this poem suggests a contrast between the mortal state and that world of perfect beauty which the Nightingale song represents. It is this ideal world which Keats wishes to reach, first with the aid of wine, then through poetic imagination. Gradually, the poet passes on to contrast the transitoriness of human life with the permanence of the song's bird's life. Such thought lead him off into the ages, from where he brings back those memorable touches of far-off Bible and legendary romance. Finally, catching up his own last word, forlorn, with an abrupt change of mood and meaning, the poet returns to daily consciousness. The poem was written in April 1819 when Keats was staying with his friend Charles Brown at Wentworth Palace, Hampstead. A nightingale had built its nest near the house. Keats felt a tranquil and continual joy in her song, and one morning he took his chair to the grass plot under a plum tree where he sat for 2 or 3 hours. When he returned, he had the ode ready in his hands. Thus, this ode is a spontaneous expression of the poet's joy in the song of the nightingale. Let's start reading. My heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains. My sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains. 1 minute passed, and Lee the watts had sunk. It is not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. So here the poet says that when he listens to the song of the nightingale one evening, his heart begins to ache with the excess of joy. He is overtaken by a kind of drowsiness, as if he had drunk a dose of some opium drug, or the water of the river of forgetfulness. Only a minute passed. The poet does not envy the happy lot of the nightingale, but he is too happy in her happiness. He wishes to reach the melodious plot, where amidst the beech tree, the light-winged faery of the forest, that is the nightingale, is singing with full-throated ease the song of the summer. Oh, for a draught of vintage that hath been cooled a long age in the deep delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, dance and provincial song and sunburnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of true, the blushful hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim, and purple-stained mouth, that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. Here the poet expresses a strong desire for the draught of wine that has been cooled for a long time under the earth. He longs for the choicest wine drawn from the daintiest flowers of southern France. This wine will remind the poet of the green vegetation of the countryside, with all the dancing, songs, merrymaking of the sunburnt peasants of the province. This wine will also inspire the poet, just as the water of hippocrene inspired those who drank it. Then the poet describes the beaker full of the rich red wine, the wine being as red as the blushes of that girl. The rising and breaking of the bubbles in the cup remind the poet of the closing and opening of her eyes. Under the intoxication of such wine, the poet wants to escape to the world of the nightingale. Fade far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known, the weariness, the fever, and the fret. Here, where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few sad last grey hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. The poet again expresses his desire to escape from this world of miseries to the world of the nightingale. He wants to forget the world of realities completely. This world is full of weariness, diseases, and anxieties. Here people are constantly suffering and writhing in pain. Old grey-headed people are afflicted with palsy. Young also wither and grow thin like ghosts and die premature deaths. The moment a man begins to reflect over life, he is reminded of sorrows and griefs. Here man is always conscious of disappointments. Here beauty is short-lived, and passions of young lovers also last for a very short time. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his bards, but on the viewless wings of poesy. Though the dull brain perplexes and retards, already with thee tender is the night, and happily the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry face. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown, through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. In this stanza, the poet wants to migrate to the world of the nightingale. Now he rejects the idea of going there with the help of wine. He intends to fly on the viewless wings of poetry, though his intellect and reason obstruct his flight. So in his imagination, he finds himself migrated to the ideal world of the nightingale. In that world, night is very tender. The queen moon is seen sitting on her throne, surrounded by her starry fairies. Here, the poet sees no light, except that which is brought from above by the breezes through the thick leaves and branches of trees, overgrown with moss. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs. But in the embalmed darkness, guess its sweet, wherewith the seasonable month endows the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild, white hawthorn and the pastoral eglantine, fast fading violets covered up in leaves, and mid-May's eldest child, the coming musk-rose, full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. In this stanza, the poet imagines the scene of the nightingale's world through his senses. As there is darkness due to thick foliage, he cannot see what tender and sweet-smelling blossoms grow on the branches of trees. But he can recognize each flower by its smell, the flowers which the flowery month of May has produced. He can guess the presence of white hawthorn, forest eglantine, and fast-fading violet, which is the first flower of the middle of the May. He can also recognize the musk-rose, which is full of sweet juice, and which is the favorite gathering place for the murmurous honeybees. Darkling I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. Now, more than ever seems it rich to die, to seize upon the midnight with no pain, while thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. Still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, to thy high requiem become a sod. In the darkness, the poet listens to the song of the nightingale. His intense disgust with the world leads him to the thoughts of death. On several occasions in the past, he had been attracted by death. and had written a number of songs addressing death, appealing her to stop his breath. The poet now says that this is the happiest moment for him to die, as he would die a painless death at this time of the midnight when the nightingale is pouring forth its music in profuse strains. The nightingale would continue singing even when he is turned into a piece of clay. The song of the nightingale will become a mourning song when the poet dies. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self-same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth, when sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. In this stanza, the poet says that the nightingale was not born to die. The hungry generations of human beings will not be able to destroy the generations of nightingale. The song that the poet hears this night was heard in the past ages, both by the kings and the peasants. The same song must have been heard by Ruth, who, feeling depressed and homesick, stood weeping in the foreign cornfields. The same song must have brought an enchanting effect upon the windows of a castle, standing on the seashore in some desolate and forlorn place. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell, to toll me back from thee to my sole self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu, thy plaintive anthem fades, past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now it is buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? This is the last stanza of this poem. In this, the poet once again comes back to the real world. The word forlorn reminds him of his loneliness. He bids farewell to the nightingale, for fancy cannot deceive him for long. The bird song is gradually departing and becoming more and more distant. It seems to be crossing the fields, the stream, and finally lost in the next valley. The poet wonders whether he is waking or dreaming. The vision of the nightingale is over. That's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the explanation. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comment section. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.